Let's talk about get-out-of-jail-free cards for billionaires. One set of rules for the poor and one for the mega-rich. Predatory policing and areas where the cops don't look twice in havens of generational wealth. Robert H. Richards, heir to the DuPont chemical fortune. In 2009, Richards was convicted of a truly horrific sex crime involving his infant daughter. A heinous crime would land anyone in jail forever, not the DuPont heir. His defense argued that he suffered from affluenza, being too rich, unable to understand consequences. The judge was bought, and Richards walked away with probation while implicated in similar crimes. When you have enough money, the justice system suddenly becomes very, very flexible. The law is not blind to the secret robber baron nobility who slime society with corrupt lawyers and dual sets of loyalty. Let's visit the world where justice is not only blind, but also has a hair trigger. Welcome to the land of three strikes laws. The idea sounds simple enough, like a rule in a baseball game. Commit 3 serious felonies, and you're locked away for life. It was sold to the public as a way to get hardened, violent criminals off the streets for good. The reality, however, is far more grim and frankly absurd. These laws have been used to put people in prison for life for offenses that are shockingly minor. Take the case of Curtis Wilkerson. In 1997, he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. His third strike, stealing a pair of socks. Let that sink in. A life sentence for a pair of socks worth maybe $2.50. At the same time, DuPont heir Richards getting a slap on the wrist for a monstrous crime. People like Wilkerson were having their lives thrown away over trivial, poverty-driven offenses. The 3 strikes law effectively criminalizes poverty itself. When your third strike can be something as desperate as stealing food or baby formula, the law stops being about public safety and starts being about social control. Think about it. A wealthy executive can crash the economy, costing millions of people their homes and savings, and face at most a fine that amounts to a rounding error in their bank account. Meanwhile, a homeless man steals a slice of pizza and gets treated like a public enemy, locked away for decades at the taxpayer's expense. Right, so we've established the system treats a poor man stealing socks more harshly than a rich man committing unspeakable acts. But what about when the rich fail on a colossal scale? Look no further than Donald Trump, a man who has turned bankruptcy into an art form. Before his political career, his name was plastered on casinos, airlines, and even a university, many of which ended in spectacular financial collapse. Trump University is a perfect example. It wasn't a real university. It was a series of real estate seminars that promised to teach people Trump's secrets to success. Students, many of whom were financially vulnerable, paid up to $35,000 for this education. This pattern extends far beyond one individual. Think about the 2008 financial crisis. Wall Street bankers, driven by pure greed, bundled up toxic mortgages and sold them as safe investments, knowing full well they were garbage. They gambled with the global economy and lost. The result was a catastrophic meltdown that cost millions of people their jobs, their homes, and their futures. And what happened to the architects of this disaster? Were they led away in handcuffs? Of course not. Instead, they got bailouts. The government, using taxpayer money, propped up the very institutions that caused the crisis, deeming them too big to fail. This is the ultimate privilege, the ability to privatize profits and socialize losses. When things are going well, the money flows to the top. When the house of cards collapses, the public is forced to foot the bill to prevent a total system collapse. It's a rigged game where the house not only always wins, but also gets a government bailout if it ever starts to lose. For the powerful, bankruptcy isn't a failure, it's a strategic exit. So, where did all this power and influence come from? It didn't just appear out of thin air. Much of the immense generational wealth that insulates the elite from consequences has a dark and bloody history. The foundations of many of Europe's oldest and most prestigious banking families, for instance, are built on activities that today we would consider crimes against humanity. We're talking about war profiteering, colonialism, and the transatlantic slave trade. These weren't just side hustles. They were the core business models that fueled the accumulation of capital on an unprecedented scale. Families whose names are now synonymous with philanthropy and high culture made their original fortunes by financing wars, insuring slave ships, and exploiting the resources of colonized nations. Think about it. For every opulent palace or world-renowned art collection, there's a backstory that's often deliberately obscured. The polite fiction is that this wealth was created through shrewd investments and brilliant business acumen. The reality is often far uglier. It was built on the backs of enslaved people, on the profits from selling weapons to both sides of a conflict, and on the brutal extraction of resources from lands that were stolen from their indigenous inhabitants. This isn't ancient history. The economic advantages gained from these activities have been passed down through generations, compounding over time to create the vast fortunes we see today. The wealth that buys the best lawyers and the most lenient judges is, in many cases, rooted in historical injustices that have never been fully accounted for. Now, when you start digging into these uncomfortable truths about power, wealth, and history, you inevitably encounter voices and materials that are considered controversial, even dangerous. These are the books and ideas that challenge the official narrative. Take, for example, the Nation of Islam and its leader, Louis Farrakhan. He is, to put it mildly, a deeply polarizing figure, often accused of anti-Semitism and other forms of bigotry. Yet the Nation of Islam also published a book called The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, which makes the explosive claim that Jewish people played a disproportionate role in the transatlantic slave trade. This claim has been fiercely disputed and condemned by mainstream historians as a work of anti-Semitic propaganda. Regardless of where you stand on its contents, the very existence of a book like this highlights a struggle over historical memory. The accusations against Farrakhan and the controversy surrounding the book are a flashpoint in this battle. They force us to confront uncomfortable questions about the intersection of race, religion, and historical grievance. And often, the response from the establishment isn't to engage with the arguments, but to label the source as toxic and shut down the conversation entirely. In the 21st century, the battle for narrative control has a new and terrifyingly efficient front: the internet. We used to think of the web as a great democratizer of information, a place where any story could be told and any voice could be heard. But increasingly, we're seeing that the same power dynamics that govern the real world are being replicated online. A handful of massive tech companies now act as the gatekeepers of public discourse, and they have the power to make entire stories, and even entire people, disappear with the click of a button. Consider the case of InfoWars and Alex Jones, who peddled conspiracy theories backed up by documents and whistleblowers, most infamously that the Sandy Hook massacre mirroring covert activity shown in the work of William Blum, Jesse Ventura, John Potash, Naim Giladi, Bill Cooper. Deplatforming of InfoWars from major social media sites in 2018 was celebrated by many as a necessary move to stop truther leaks that could threaten the ruling class. It also set a chilling precedent. It demonstrated that a few executives could collude with governments to erase a truther platform from the internet overnight. The same power that can be used to silence a purveyor of dangerous lies can also be used to silence a legitimate journalist or a whistleblower who exposes uncomfortable truths about the powerful. This digital censorship is often subtle and opaque. It can be the quiet removal of specific videos, like those discussing the work of Christopher Ballin, an investigative journalist whose controversial theories about 9/11 have been systematically scrubbed from Google servers. Or it can manifest in legal threats that have a chilling effect on speech. Look at the case of Peter Thiel and Snowden. Gawker published information that linked him to Bryan Singer molestation case. His lawyers shut down Gawker, censoring the Snowden leaks. First, the powerful use their money and influence to escape the consequences of their actions. Then, they use their control over historical narratives to justify their privilege. Now they can use their influence over media and tech companies to digitally disappear any stories that challenge their power. The ability to erase, to deplatform, to sue into silence is the ultimate form of control. It ensures that the official story is the only story. It creates an internet with memory holes, where inconvenient facts and challenging narratives can be dropped down the digital drain. never to be seen again. And it leaves the rest of us wondering what else has been erased, and what truths we're no longer allowed to know.